Now before we start learning how to enter in our overtime, we need to define what overtime is within our project. As you recall back in the Level 1 training video when I set up my project calendar, I defined a working day as an 8-hour day. So anything over 8 hours would be overtime. If your typical work day is 5 hours, then of course anything over 5 hours would be overtime. So how much is that going to cost you to assign, let's say, one resource working on a task, one overtime hour? Well, again, back in the Level 1 training video, we set up our resources in the resource sheet view. Let's go over here and right-click on our collapse view bar and go down to the resource sheet view. There's a list of all the resources, how much they charge an hour or how much they cost an hour, and then of course over here we have our overtime rate, which if you haven't set up, go ahead and do so. It doesn't automatically calculate it for you, you'll just have to punch it in over here. So we have our standard hourly rate for Rider 1, which is $15 an hour. And then if we hold to the standard of time and a half, then we have 15 hours plus half of that equals $22.50. And of course you can type in whatever you want for the overtime rate, but again, if you want to adhere to the time and a half, then go ahead and type it in. It won't certainly flag you if you go beyond what you have here. For example, with Rider 2, it's double time, $30 an hour instead of time and a half. Okay, now that we know that anything over 8 hours within my project here is going to be overtime, and we know that we have the overtime rate set up, let's go ahead and start entering in some overtime hours. Now there are three places that you can enter overtime in, and they are your task usage view, your resource usage view, and your split window. Let's go ahead and do the task usage view first. Come over here, right click on the collapse view bar, and go down and select task usage. Okay, in our task usage view, you have a listing of all your tasks here, and then below each task is the resources assigned to the task. So we've got task 5 completed here. Let's go down to task 7 and we have Rider 1 assigned to that task. Let's scroll down just a bit here. Now we have our work field here, or the work column, but if you hover over that dividing bar and you click and drag it to the right, you'll see that you have no overtime column. You have to insert that manually. Well, you could ask me and say, well, can I insert the overtime column into any view? Yes, you can, but the only views that allow you to enter in any information within that column are the task usage view and the resource usage view. The split window doesn't have these columns here, and we'll cover that later in just a minute. So to insert the overtime field as a column, I'm going to come up here and right click on the column header that I want to insert the new column in front of. So when I right click on it, I'm going to come down here and select insert column, type in O, and then scroll down to find my overtime. There it is, overtime work, select it, click OK, and there we go. So let me scroll back up just a little bit here. So we're looking again at Rider 1, working on the task create an outline. In fact, now that I have the resource selected, I can come up here on the standard toolbar and click on the scroll to the task. And what it does over in the right hand side of the pane in the grid, it takes me right to those 2 days, 8 hours on Monday, 8 hours on Tuesday, gives me a total of 16 working hours here. That's been assigned to this resource that's working on this task. So you're looking at this and saying, okay, he doesn't need any overtime because the typical workday is 8 hours. Well, if I get some feedback and find out that the writer is going to take an extra couple of hours here because something has come up, I can come over here and increase his work hours by 2, click off in a blank area, and then notice all the cells that are affected by that change. It increased the outline phases total hours from 40 to 42. And then more particularly, notice the duration goes from 2 days to 2 1/4. And then you can come over here in the grid and you can see that there's still the 8 hours on Monday and Tuesday, but it added the other 2 hours on Wednesday because again, the typical workday is only 8 hours. It can't take that 2 hours and bump it up and say it's 9 or 10. So to make that happen and to assign these 2 hours as overtime, we want to come over here in the overtime column and increase that by 2 hours, click off in a blank area and notice the changes. First, the highlighted changes here. So instead of the duration of being 2 1/4 days, it's now down to 2 days. And then over here in the grid, notice that instead of 2 hours on Wednesday, it's been pulled back into Tuesday, where he's working 8 hours on Monday and an extra 2 hours on Tuesday. Now you could say, well, why can't I have 1 hour on Monday and 1 hour on Tuesday? Well, as far as project schedule and budget calculations are concerned, it doesn't matter when the overtime hours are worked, only that they are worked. Okay, let's go ahead and hit undo a couple of times so we can go back to where we were, the original 16 hours, because we want to go to another view from the task usage view to right click on the collapsed view bar and go down to the resource usage view. And instead of the task being listed with the resources underneath, now you have the resources with the task listed underneath that the resources are assigned to. So Rider 1 is assigned to all these resources. Go ahead and right click and insert your overtime work column. Again, down to insert, type in the letter O, and then select overtime, click OK. I already have it here. And there's the task create outline. Now again, it's no different than doing this in the task usage view, except let me go ahead and click and drag and stretch this over. We've got our 16 hours. We have a different table here, but we just have to scroll over to see the work column. There's the 16 hours, increase it by 2, click off in a blank area. And then you can see the same things happening here over in the grid, 8 hours, then 2. And then come over here and increase this by 2 hours for the overtime, click off in a blank area, the same thing happens, okay? Undo, undo. So choose your weapon, either the resource usage view or the task usage view, or let's go back to the Gantt chart. I'm going to right click on the collapsed view bar, go back to the Gantt, and then come up here on the window menu and go down to split, as you recall in our level 1 training video. Now again, we're looking at the create outline, and it's a total of 2 days, 16 hours, and there's the resource assigned to it at 100%, 2 days, 8 hours a day for 2 days, that's 16 hours. Now where do I go to enter in the overtime? Well, if you right click in a blank area down below in the split window pane, you can come down here and select resource work. It opens it up to show you the overtime work column. So I can come over here, increase the work by 2, click OK. Now you can see the duration is 2¼ days. Come down here and give the overtime work of 2 hours, click OK. The duration's cut back because now he's working 2 extra hours on one of those days. Is it the Tuesday or is it the Monday? Well, we can go back to the task usage view and find out which day has the overtime, but again, as far as project's concerned, with the schedule and budget calculations, it doesn't matter when the overtime hours are worked, only that they are worked. So as you recall, to get rid of the split, I can double click really fast on that split line, and then right click on the collapsed view bar, go back to the resource usage view. There it is, create the outline by Rider 1, and you can see over here in the grid that 8 hours on the first day and the 2 overtime hours are on the second day. Now you're probably wondering and looking at this and saying, okay, why does he have 8 hours on creating an outline for Rider 1? And then above that on the same day he has another task at 4 hours. I mean, that's a total of 12 hours. Isn't he over allocated? Shouldn't we give him extra overtime? Well, yes, you should, except that this task I have already marked completed. If it wasn't marked completed, these would be in red, showing that he's over by 4 hours, in which case I could go ahead and give him some overtime for this day so he's not over allocated. In fact, you can already see some flaws in my project plan here. Let me go back to the Gantt chart and right click on the collapsed view bar, go to the Gantt chart, and you can see that Rider 1 is assigned to all these tasks, and he started earlier on this task, which means he's working on both tasks at the same time, which means he can only work one 8-hour day, so this other task he's working 8 hours on would be considered overtime. So hopefully by this example you can keep this in mind when you're setting up your own project, that when you have any overlapping tasks like this, that they're going to be over allocated here, because Rider 1 working on both tasks at the same time here, at least during that portion of time, is going to be over allocated. Not only that, but because these tasks here aren't directly linked up to this one down below, you can see that the Rider 1 working on this task is going to be working at the same time on that task as well. So in a perfect world, I would have this task finish, then start on the next task, then that task, and then go to the next one, and not have the relationships or links broken here, so we can continue on in a continuous format. The relationship that I like best again is when this task must finish before the next task can start. In any case, in summary here, I wanted to show you that you didn't have to stick to that pattern, and that you can really have some challenging work on your project if you start changing your relationships or don't have them linked up in a nice, easy to follow format. But then again, what project has ever gone perfect? So you won't be flagged for these except for your over allocated resources, which won't be flagged if you've marked them complete already, as we just learned over here in the resource usage view. That Rider 1, the reason why he's not over allocated again is because he completed this task, and this task has yet to be completed, creating the outline. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.